Hawks Lays an Egg by Butterfly Apocalypse on AO3. Episode 21, Chapter 8. Dabi sat awkwardly in the shotgun seat of Mr. Scruff's car. The only thing to break the silence was the cassette of 70s hits playing on repeat, and the occasional dad noise Miss Scruff made as he drove. Dabi tried not to stare at Miss Scruff's paws on the steering wheel. He didn't have the opposable thumb. How was he steering? Buddy was resting his head in Dabi's lap, sitting on the floor between his feet. Dabi absently fondled his ears, trying not to freak out about the fact that his baby was about to hatch, and he was sitting in a car driven by a person who was a dog with a gang of other dog people who had been trying to kill him several minutes before shoved into close quarters in the back seat. Miss Scruff had insisted that the father-to-be gets the front seat. Mr. Scruff cleared his throat, for like the upteenth time. So, he spoke for the first time since getting into the car. Is it a little boy or a little girl? We think it's a boy, Dabi said, but as he did, he realized he didn't know why they thought that. But we don't know why. Miss Scruff nodded, leaving it a surprise. That's exciting. And terrifying. Dabi wiped his sweaty palms off of Body's head. That too, Miss Scruff agreed. So what name are you thinking? We haven't agreed yet. I was leaning towards more Hottery, but Huz, my wife, hasn't settled on anything. We haven't discussed many girl names, but I guess a lot of the names we were thinking work either way. It felt weird to just casually discuss his baby with strangers, especially strangers who tried to kill him, but they were nice enough to give him a ride. And these days it matters less and less, Miss Scruff commented. Plenty of young men with girl names who do just fine, and plenty of little young ladies with boy names who do just fine too, and plenty of people are neither who do well with either. Dabi wasn't sure what to say to that, so he just nodded in agreement, and silence fell again. What's your birth plan? The psychic asked. I'm guessing it wasn't supposed to involve you being in a fight? We didn't really have a plan. At home? Natural? Were those terms people used when talking about childbirth, right? He hadn't actually been there for an actual laying of the egg, which was probably the more childbirth part of the whole thing. The psychic test. A home birth with no plan? I'm a high-profile villain. It's not like I could just go to the hospital. Dabi snorted. Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. The psychic relented. There should be a villain hospital. Yeah, it could go right next to Villain Mark. Dabi joked. There's a Villain Mark? Yipped Sniffer. Are you going to be breastfeeding or using formula? Spot asked. I, personally, will not be breastfeeding my child. Dabi deadpanned. Breastfeeding is better for your baby's immune system, Spot continued, and it helps mommy bond with the baby. Yes, thank you, I'm aware, Dabi said. We're not even sure how malleable the kid is gonna be. Oh, how exciting! Sniffer cried. Mutant babies are always more exciting. Dabi chuckled. You can say that again. If you're gonna go co-sleep, make sure you do it safely, Spot put in. And remember that sudden infant death syndrome can happen. Sudden infant death syndrome. Dabi's mind exploded in horrible scenarios that he just pushed down. The kid needed to be born. It was a bit early to be worrying about him dying suddenly. And remember ABC, alone on their back in a crib, Spot said. And sleep training as soon as possible, the psych called. And if you give a baby honey, it will die. Do you already have a kindergarten picked out? Snapper asked. Kindergarten, sleep training, honey? Dabi was beginning to feel anxious, crawling up to his chest. He was supposed to know all this. He was going to kill this kid. And he wasn't even going to mean to. The mommy blogs had failed him. Hey, Miss Scruff barked. Knock it off. Can't you see the guy's terrified enough already? Dabi would have felt offended if it weren't completely true. They murmured their apologies. "No need to be embarrassed, kid," Miss Gruff said in a softer voice. "This is your first, yeah?" Dabi swallowed. "Yep." Miss Gruff nodded. "Thought so. Don't worry, babies aren't as delicate as people think they are. Just don't be kicking them like footballs, and you'll be good." He barked a laugh. "No matter how much you might want to when they go through their terrible twos." Dabi averted his gaze at the window. "I'm never gonna hurt my kid." His voice was much more tense than he meant it to be. Miss Gruff seemed to understand. "Of course." Dabi didn't know if it was the stress of omelet hatching, the emotional turmoil of the past week, or just the overwhelming desire for Mr. Scruff to tell him, "Good job, sport," but it was something that had him opening up. "My old man didn't love us. He's just a flaming trash can. I'm not even sure he can love. There was nothing we could do that would make him proud, and he would made that very clear. He had some delusions about making one of us the new top hero, and until we were disappointments to him. I wanted to make him proud for a long time. When I was a stupid kid who still thought that something I could do, when I broke, he just threw me away. And my mom, she knew what was happening, didn't do anything about it. If he got too rough with one of us, she might just say something, but he wouldn't hesitate to be too rough on her too. But she was an adult. She could have told someone. She could have taken us and left." Dabi took a deep breath. "Not her fault for what happened, but I still wish she'd done something. If she loved us, if she loved me, she would have done something. Right?" Sniffer wimpled and sniffled. Dabi went on. "I wanted to kill my dad. I still do. That's why I'm a villain, actually. That's why I'm still alive. I can't die until that bastard's dead. I want to have the last laugh." He pressed his forehead against the cold window. "And then my wife got pregnant, and that sort of changed things. Now I have to live with other people, not just myself and my goal. I was mad at first, I guess. I didn't want things to change, and how can I be a good dad? Neither of my parents were shit, and I've gone and made a monster of myself." He laughed humorlessly. "I decided instead of defeating my old man in combat, I'll beat him by being the dad he never was. I really thought..." His voice broke. "I really thought I could be a good dad." Buddy put his paw on his leg. He didn't know if Psychic was communicating the story to him, or if he had doggy ESP or whatever, or if he just wanted some more attention. It was comforting, though. "Me and, the missus actually got into a fight, like a week ago. The first time we spoke since then was the text letting me know the baby's coming, and I'm scared." He never opened up to anyone like this. Besides Omelette. It was easier the second time around. There was just something about talking to strangers that was almost liberating as talking to an egg. The backseat was full of whimpering dog people. "That's so sad," Sniffer cried. "I'm sure whatever this fight was about, you'll get through it," Spot said encouragingly. "Stress about the baby probably made things worse, yeah?" "You are gonna be a good dad," said the psychic quietly. "Being scared means you care." "Sure," Dabi scoffed. "I mean it," they continued. "You've learned from your parents' failures, and you care, and it will mean you will constantly improve yourself." Dabi let the sounds of ABA fill the silence. The trip from the warehouse to Hawks' apartment was a long one, maybe longer by Dabi's rising anxiety. But the moment they rolled near Hawks' apartment complex, it suddenly felt too short. At some point, it had started snowing. Fat drops of sheet plastered against the windshield. Dabi could see the lights on Hawks' apartment. His hands and feet were cold. His baby was hatching in there. All of his previous resolve of committing to be a villain dissolved, and he was thrown right back into "I've got to be the best dad" mindset. He reached for the door with a shaking hand and felt a paw on his shoulder. Hey, kid. Miss Gruff fixed him with an intense, dark glaze. You take care of that kid. You hear me? Dabi nodded. Of course. I mean that. Miss Gruff continued. The moment your baby is born, you can hold them tight and give them all the love you have. Even when you're tired and irritated, you remember what a blessing it is that you even have them. You. His voice cracked. You never know when you're gonna lose them. Dabi turned towards him. Did you lose your kid? Miss Gruff nodded solemnly. She's still alive, my little girl. The day she was born was the day I swore I was gonna get my life together. But it's a slippery slope. Back into crime, and her mom took her away. I don't have custody anymore. She turned 12 this year. I haven't seen her since she was 5. His voice was getting tight. So don't you make the mistake I made. Don't take a single second for granted, kid. You promised me that. I promise, Dabi said solemnly. With one last nod at Miss Gruff, he opened the car door. And kid, Miss Gruff called, as Dabi was marching towards Hawks' apartment. Dabi paused to look back. Send us pictures. Dabi's lips quicked upwards. He gave the strays a lazy 2-finger salute as they drove away. His heart began to pound with every step he took closer to Hawks' door. It had only been right around a week since he'd been here last, but it might as well have been a lifetime. Everything felt surreal, like he was in a dream. Maybe he was dreaming. He slapped himself across the face. Ow. But he didn't wake up. He was just an idiot, standing in the sleep, slapping himself. Dabi quickly glanced around to make sure nobody had seen that. Hawks' door was in front of him. Should he knock? Was the door locked? Should he open it? Kick it open for effectiveness? Yell for Hawks to let him in? Send him another text? A gust of wind, carrying a sheet of directly on the back of Dabi's neck, convinced him to push the door. It opened. Huh, Dabi thought. If Hawks hadn't been locking the door, he could have just shown up here at any time. He supposed he could have just come in through the window or something, if he had been so inclined. He once again had the suspicions that Toga's plan with the box and the fried chicken would have worked. Dabi didn't bother taking his shoes off as entering. It was quiet and dark. He quickly glanced around for any sign of an ambush. He was distressed by how easily Hawks would have been able to set up a capture for him. He was suddenly less amused by the chicken and box thing. He'd fallen for Hawks in a box. Especially a sexy Hawks in a box. He probably wouldn't have even seen the stick propped up on the box. He probably wouldn't have even noticed he was captured. You see, Dabi had noticed he'd rarely thought with his brain when it came to Hawks. All of his blood was in his brain now, though. His thoughts were racing. All around Hawks' apartment, open bags of baby supplies were scattered as if hastily drugged through. Baby bottles were knocked over the counter, and he rolled across the floor. There was a new Endeavor onesie sitting on the table. Dabi made quick work of this one, too. Hawks, he called out quietly. He didn't hear a reply. Maybe Hawks had gone to the hospital. Maybe Dabi was going to miss the baby hatching. The thought made him unbearably sad. He decided to check in at Hawks' bedroom. Relief flooded him when he saw the bathroom light on with the door ajar and the sound of shuffling on the other side. He took a deep breath and crossed the distance. The sight that met him when he pushed the door open was shocking. The medicine cabinet was thrown open and its contents were everywhere. Probably every towel and blanket Hawks owned was spread out and around the bathtub. In the center of the fuzzy mass sat Omelette. A spiderweb of cracking laced the shell. It took several moments for Dabi to even notice Hawks, who sat in the corner shaking. Hawks. Before Dabi could even finish speaking, he had an armful of Birdman, and... Dabi thought. Holding Hawks, every single bitter thought and feeling he'd built up towards the man in the past week melted away like cotton candy in the rain. Though considerably happier than Dabi's tragic carnival experience, his heart pounded more than it already was. He worried that he was going to go into cardiac arrest. He was sure Hawks could feel the rhythm between them. Hawks squeezed him harder, pressing his face into his shoulder. It made Dabi feel breathless and stupid and loved. He felt wanted. He felt needed just because he was holding Hawks and... Dabi thought again. This was love. Okay. Shit is happening. The egg is hatching. Shit is happening. I really wish we could just have more of this. Oh, God. I would love a sequel. God, this is my one thing with fanfiction sometimes. It's like, oh my God, that was amazing. I need more. Feed me more. Which is why I really love the really long fanfictions. Those are my babies. Those are my everything. Those fill me with joy that I could never, ever, ever feel again. Sometimes you read a fanfic and you're like, fuck, I kind of want to reread it, but like experience it like I experienced it the first time. You get me? You get me? Sometimes it's just that hard hitting, like, I want to experience this again for the first time, you know? I want to experience this for the first time again. There you go. That's better sentencing. I think both fit. Okay, but finally the egg is hatching and Hawks is finally back. No, Hawks is finally back. Dabi's finally back with Hawks. Things are going great. Nothing could go wrong now. I hope I did not just jinx us by saying that. Okay, as always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.